mind if I stay by your side? Just looking at you, how the time goes by. Do you mind if I stay by your side? Just looking at you, how the time goes by.
Those have been the best finished watches I've encountered. Okay, Archie Luxury Livestream. If that's really Archie Luxury, I salute you, my man. I know you're on the other side of the world and you're getting up early to watch that. What else is going on here? We got
Welcome to the program. Welcome to the show, guys. Another afternoon stream here for our UK European fans. People were asking me yesterday, hey, do you think you could do another one? And I was like, yeah, you know what? If I got some time, I'll see what I can put together. And just wanted to kind of talk about everybody's favorite iconic watch, the Rolex Submariner today. There's been a lot of, obviously, buzz with the news of the Nick Folks Submariner book. A lot of folks in the community have started to get that book delivered. I believe you can only get the silk edition or that kind of first edition from a certain UK seller, and I think that's where a lot of folks are getting these early copies of the book because I looked on it on Amazon in Canada, and they don't actually release till like October, so I don't know if that's gonna be the same edition or something else. But yeah, like book's getting a lot of buzz because I think for the first time we're seeing Rolex production numbers. I mean, this book is being promoted by Rolex itself, right? So definitely an endorsement from Rolex. So the accuracy of these production numbers, I would say, is probably pretty high, and that's what I think is most surprising about the book. I think it's most appealing for most people that don't read books or don't collect watch books or aren't interested in reading watch books, but I think with the Nick Folks book on the Submariner, number one, like I said, I've told people yesterday, I own the Patek biography book, the official authorized biography of Patek Philippe, written by Nick Folks, and he did a fantastic job on that book. Really in depth, in depth on the history, and really just a well put together book. Obviously, an expensive book. But definitely worth it if you like history, if you like learning about brands. Look, I'm not really a guy who likes to just collect things for the sake of collecting things. Like if I'm buying a book, I want to read it. I want to get something out of the book and whatnot. But I would say that in that if it's written by Nick Folks, I think it's going to be a lot of detail. And what we're hearing from a lot of folks that have gotten copies of the Nick Folks Submariner book is the production numbers. I think that's really what's attracting people. So we will probably talk about that a little later today. I wanted to go through the Submariner itself, talk about some of the references. There's been a lot of interest, interestingly enough, on my afternoon streams in vintage. Archie's a big vintage guy too. He doesn't like vintage anymore. He doesn't like buying vintage anymore. But when it comes to vintage watches, he has a really, really, a really deep knowledge of certain references, and because of the fact that, like, look, Archie was a dealer at one point. He doesn't really talk about it that often, but when he worked in Thailand, like, he was a watch dealer. He was in Australia, he was a watch dealer. Even when the show early on in the days of this show, Archie was a watch dealer. So he does have a lot of knowledge on vintage watches because he handled a lot of them through the watch trade. He has owned vintage watches. He said he's claimed he's owned a 5508. We're going to look at what a 5508 is a little later. But he's owned a lot of these pieces, and I always encourage people, like, I really find a lot of fun talking to Archie about vintage, neo vintage pieces, because frankly, there's not many people on YouTube anymore that are that interested in those type of references, or that era of watchmaking. That just, especially neo vintage is kind of, I mean, vintage has always had some popularity. Neo vintage hasn't really caught on. I'd say it's in a bit of a, we're kind of in that bit of the bottom here, I would say, in neo vintage, because there's only, I think there's only one way to go up from here on vintage, as neo vintage, as modern Rolex continues to increase in price, whether that's through inflation or through more booms in the market and whatnot, which could happen at any point in time, I could say. So definitely, today we're going to go through the subby. Say hello to a couple of the folks in the chat. I know a couple of people have popped in. I haven't advertised this show on the WhatsApp groups or on the community pages today, just because I didn't have a lot of time to do it. But yeah, look, as people trickle in, I'm just going to talk watches. Obviously, any questions you guys have, you don't have to super chat. Super chats are obviously welcome and appreciated. But yeah, I'll be pulling up comments and stuff like that as we go. Obviously, this is for you guys to get some watch talk in, and definitely just talk watches as we did on the Archie Luxury Show before. We got When You See It always, mostly always first in the chat, giving us the KFC buckets and the Archie avatar saying, let's go. Always pumping up the show every single time a live stream is put up. When you see it's there, pumping up everybody, making sure Archie starts out with a bang. Surdy Danny says, Tan, remember you want the 60-40 deal. Look, I'm all good. I'm happy to just give 100%. I just want to make sure that we have a good show, and you guys get, obviously value for what you guys are looking for from the channel. You guys obviously have seen we've added a lot of new panelists. Yesterday we had a new panelist, former buyer at Crown and Caliber, Mark Hackman, who is he's doing a show, or he has a channel called the Watch Society, mainly covering. He does a lot of interviews. He's done interviews with Bertrand Melan for Moser, and a few others. I believe an executive at Christopher Ward, not Christian Ward, Danny, Christopher Ward, and yeah, no, cool guy. Came on yesterday. It was definitely. I think he got hazed a bit by HR at the start, but really good sport. He was, he trolled right back, and brought a ton of knowledge. And we had Jay Anthony hop on, who had a connection with Mark and Watch Chat as well. So a lot of new panelists in the Archieverse right now. And we're really focused on Watch Talk. And again, for me today is a big focus on that. We got Loose Tooth talk about the cartel, and is asking or saying, Tan, I've been looking at vintage Tudor Submariners 9401 and 9411. Let's pull up Tudor Submariner 9401 and see what that looks like. All right, Tudor Collectors, 2 Submariners here, 9401. Yeah, I mean, these are loved by, I would say I wouldn't say everybody, but I think a lot of, obviously, if you're a Submariner lover, the Tudor Subby is definitely a piece that I would say is one that is definitely very favorite. Skyzen, how you doing, man? Appreciate you hopping on.
You're welcome, Tan. You're welcome.
We're talking. We're going to be talking Submariners today. I know that you got the book. You can help us with the production numbers. I'm going to maybe talk a bit about some of the references before we get into the production numbers. Loose Tooth is looking at some Tudor Submariners, either a 9401 that I have up here, 9401, or over here on the right, and then blue and a black, and then I believe there's a 9411. There's 9401 and then 94110, and then the sub date. Okay, so here's the sub date, 9411. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would probably go no date. Personally, I think it just looks. I mean, this is a vintage. It's a vintage Submariner. For me, somebody who's researched a lot on the Submariner lineup. I mean, when people say the no date sub, it also kind of bothers me because there's the date sub and then there's the sub, right? So for me, I would say probably no date. I don't know, guys, and do you prefer the date on the other one, or do you prefer the no date as a bit of a cleaner dial here on this Tudor Submariner?
I'm a no-date person, I'm afraid to say. I like the symmetry of a no-date, and I don't like cyclopses. I find them really off-putting.
Yeah, and I think even on this one, there's no. I mean, I don't know if there's no Cyclops by it's kind of like the Sea Dweller, right? Where there's no Cyclops. I don't know if there's supposed to be a Cyclops here, but just it just doesn't look as great to me as just a cleaner no date. So for me, Loose Tooth, I'm gonna go no date. Skyson's going no date. We've got Toyota Mo in the chat. Nice to see you, Toyota Mo. Darth Negus says yesterday's show was very good. I think having a lot of people on the panel works, especially fresh faces. Yeah, look, like I've kind of told a lot of the folks that are close in the Archie community that um, I'm not planning to kind of look in the past, right? Like we've got a lot of people that they know where the show is. Everybody's welcome. You know, whether you've had beef, you haven't had beef. Like the Archie show's always been an open door for people, and yeah, like I'm not going to tap the past. I'm not going to try to get people on from the past that just just may not. It's just not their thing right now, or anymore for that matter. For me, I'm networking, and Archie's networking with a lot of new people. The name Archie Luxury goes a long way on YouTube. I think a lot of folks underestimate that. Everybody I've spoken to, and I think everybody's Archie's spoken to, that we've talked to about, hopping on the show, have been very positive and saying, yeah, totally interested, 100%. I just heard back from Mark saying that, he's trying to hop on once a week now. Obviously, Jay Anthony's been hopping on more than more than a lot of us expected, but it's great to see Jay Ant. We got Watch Chat from Malaysia. He's hopping on every few days. Like it's been really good, Darth Negus, and I'm really happy to see that because I've been here a long time. The Archieverse always evolves. It's never a static point in time. And look, what's important is just to respect everybody from the past that helped us out, and yeah, just keep the door open for everyone to come back. Toyota Mo says, Watch Eric just did a video about selling some of his vintage watches from his personal collection. I'll check that out. Haven't really watched Watch Eric in a while. I used to like him on CRM back in the day. Yeah, he's cool. I haven't really kept up with him. We got a super chat from Sam Davidson. Thanks so much, Sam Davidson. £3 super sticker. All right, guys, and let me get into some of these references because I know you got the info on the production numbers. So I got a Hodinkee article here, reference points, understanding the Submariner, and it says that 1953 was a big year for Rolex, and it kind of shows here on the screen 3 different Rolei that came out in 1953, and one on the left here is the Turnograph, considered the predecessor to the Submariner. We're gonna have Skyzen going here, solo layout. Okay, we're gonna get into the 6204. That's the one on the far right, but let's Skyzen's pointing out here, 1953. The 6204 pencil hand Submariner had a production quantity of 2,881 pieces, 38 millimeter stainless steel. Interesting enough, 100 meters water resistant. Super cool. I'm gonna just put you off full screen here, Skyzen.
Yeah.
The one in the middle, very famous. Everybody knows the Rolex Explorer was released 1953, and the one on the right was the one Skyzen was just showing us, the 6204. I'm going to go one by one, Skyzen, so you can, it'll probably hopefully line up with you. We just did the 6204. I have it here on the screen. Pencil hands, super cool. Submariner, on this one, there's no water resistance put on the dial. Very clean dial, though. Reminds me a lot of the Tudor Black Bay 54. Think gives me that kind of a vibe. Really, really cool. Love it. Next one, Skyzen, that's going to be coming up here is the 6205. I don't know if you have production on the 6205 next.
Yep, there we go.
6205, launch year 1954, production only 810. So the 6204, we saw Skyzen had about 2,800 pieces made in that reference. 6205, a lot smaller of a quantity. So you can see here in the 6205, we see Mercedes hands. On the screen, in Skyzen's one, we see Mercedes hands. On the one here on Hodinkee, it's still showing pencil hands. So I'm not sure. You can obviously see there's probably variations here, but even that in and of itself, where you see in the book, it's showing Mercedes hands, but in the photo, it's showing pencil hands. Even with that short production, there's variation in it, Skyzen, which I think is super cool. What do you think, Skyzen?
Yeah, definitely. But then again, it could have non-original hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And back here, if I just take you off full screen, Hodinkee does show the 6205 signature and Mercedes hands, right? So there is, that was the one in the book that we were showing here. So different variations. Again, 6205 above here with a clean dial pencil hands. So there is some variation in the 6205 range. Next one, I think, guys, we can go to is the 6200. This is the Explorer dial. I think I saw this earlier.
There we go.
6200. Okay, so launch year even less, guys, than the 6205. So 6205 at 800 produced. The 6200, same year, 1954, only 303 produced. Caliber, you can see different caliber 10. Different caliber than what you guys are used to, 3235, 3230 type stuff, different weird nomenclature back in the 50s. 200 meters water resistant, hours, minutes, and seconds. Super cool. All right, guys, and let's see what Hodinky is saying is next on the big reference points. We've got, I think we're still in the 6200. All right, now we're going to the 6536. So, Danny, if you're listening, we're getting into very close to James Bond era. This is a small crown because you're going to notice the difference between the 6538 and the 6536 is a small crown. So here we go, 30 Danny. Launch your 1955 reference 6536. Production quantity of 5,350. Again, 38 millimeters. People say mostly probably around 37 millimeters. I think Nick Folks is being a little nice here, a little generous. Probably 37 millimeters, I would say. Again, different caliber here you're seeing here. Now we got the caliber 1030 in the 6536. Previously, we had a weird nomenclature, half symbol or whatever in there. But yeah, it's a different caliber. But this is the small crown version. So I'm going to put it back up on full screen layout here on my side, guys. And so this is the small crown 6536. Definitely small production on that one. Let's look at the 653. I think that's going to be the next one. It's showing another intermediate 6536. We don't have to look at that. And then a final version of the 6536. 6538 is going to be the the big crown, as you can see here, obviously on the screen. Big crown on this. This is the Dr. No, the James Bond, the famous one everybody wants, the one I want, Sir Danny wants, everyone wants. 6538, guys, please 6538. So that's 6536.
That one.
Yes,
got
sir.
there.
There you go. So 6538. So 6538 is 2,800 produced in the 6538. So I think 6536 was how much was it on the 6536? I think it was less, right? On the one below.
Yeah. No, 5,059.
Okay, on the 6536. Okay, so 6538 then would be less. Big crown. This is the one everybody really wants compared to the small crown. And interestingly enough, if you look at Chrono, that's great, guys, and thank you for sharing that, because on Chrono 24, if you're looking to buy a 6536, a Submariner, the small crown, they're actually significantly cheaper than the 6538s. And I have actually even asked Archie that question, like, would you buy a 6536 or 6538? Immediately, Archie's like, I don't like vintage. I don't want to talk about vintage. But the 6536, definitely, if you're looking for a model, again, 38 millimeters, being generous, probably 37 millimeters. If you're looking for that kind of a watch, I think that like the 6536 is really good bang per buck to pick up to get that vibe of a 6538. But if it bothers you and it has to be the James Bond 6538, then it has to be the James Bond 6538. All right, so 6538, and then Skyzen, why don't you take us next to the next reference? Up there, we'll go up to what Nick Falk says is the 5508. So the 5508, launched year 1958. Archie's actually owned a 5508 here, and the 5508, interesting enough, guys, and the one Archie bought was a two-tone. There is no two-tone 5508. The 5508 was a steel piece. And it's just really funny because he talks about how it was butchered and whatnot. So 5508 going from, so we saw a production number of about 5,000 in the 6536, 2,800 in the 6538. And then we're bumping up to a production number of the 5508. So now it really has that Submariner look. Pretty much closer to what we're looking at what a Submariner will be. 9,000 of those were produced. Different caliber. Again, the previous one, I think, had a 1030 caliber. Now we're getting into the 1520, the 1530s. You're going to see these a lot more, I think, in the next couple of pieces. What's next after the 5508s, guys?
Should be the 55110.
All right, 5510. So similar year to the 5508, 1958. And again, you're seeing here in Rolex, you're finding little variations in the Submariner line. And I think that this is, for all the people that have been listening and we've been talking about vintage and whatnot, like, this is what I find so cool, Skyzen, is like, it's the same model year. It's the same year that Rolex was producing these pieces. Two different reference numbers, can have different variations. Super cool. and completely different production numbers, right? The other one had like 9,000, the 5510, same production year, only 500. Again, same movement, same size, just just a way
Would
smaller.
that be a chronometer? Would that be a chronometer version, the ones with the lower numbers?
Well, the calibers are the same, right? So
Yeah.
it could be right. Like it could be that they have certified one of them and not certified the other. That was happening in the past. Was some of them, even though they would be chronometer grade, they just never were certifying those movements. So yeah, it's possible on that one. If we're in the 5510, we're probably getting close to the 5513. I would assume, Skyzen, right?
Next is 5512.
5512. Okay, so the difference between the 5512 and the 5513 is exactly what Skyzen was talking about. The 5512 is typically known as the four liner, and in the four liner you have a chronometer grades, chronometer certified or superlative chronometer movement in the 5512. Production year is a year later than the 5510 and the 5508 in 1959. 17,338. Now I'm gonna guess here, Skyzen. My guess is gonna be that the 5513 is gonna have substantially more produced in the 5513. Before you show me the 5513 production, because I haven't seen it yet, the 5513 ran for like it's interesting how
62, wasn't it? To 89.
yeah, it ran for like a really long time. And interesting that Nick Folks doesn't put because he says launch year, but he doesn't put year to year, right? Like 59 to 71 or something like that. He doesn't put that. That's what I find interesting. What I would hope he would have put in there. Um, so 17,338 of the 5512s. I'm going to be showing you guys a few of these bigger in different photos. I want to make sure this guys can show us everything. We got a generous super chat from our good friend Rich Mitch, 2 British pounds. Wearing my pole router today, man. One of my favorite Gerald Genta designed watches. Pole router. I love the tuxedo pole router, Rich Mitch. If you have a tuxedo, you, sir, are a lucky man. All right, 5513. Let's see how much more it goes up from 17,000. Boom! There we go. 151,449 5513s made, as opposed to 17,000, which if you thought of the 17,000 5512 guys, in it's like you can see how the production starts ramping to like just absolute bonkers levels from very, very small production of 9,000.
Especially because obviously that's the cheaper non-chronometer version as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. And it's interesting because when the date we haven't gotten to the date era here, guys. I'm doing this kind of on the fly because I do know Submariners quite well. I know the history quite well of the evolution of the Submariner. We're in the no date or the original Submariner section. We're going to be soon moving into the date group. And you'll see production numbers are going to vary between date and no date. And really, we're in the era right now, guys, and of Rolex still considering these tool watches and watches where they're not luxury, they're not luxury pieces. You're seeing, like I mentioned, and Skyzen mentioned, huge production numbers because this one was run, Skyzen, like you said, 62 to 80 something. I think you said, was it 85? I don't remember.
89.
89, right? So like vast, like 20, 27 years. Like that is number one, very iconic in my opinion, guys. And I love that. I don't know. For me, 5513 is like grail level
Yeah,
Submariner for me.
it's the Roger Moore Bond watch from Live and Let Die and Man with a Golden Gun.
Absolutely, right? Like, Bond connection, just classic, clean design, long history. Like you can't get better than the 5513. When I think of really iconic models like the 6538, me and Sir D Danny, like obviously we lust over it because it's the Doctor No, right? It's the Goldfinger model. But when you really get into like iconic Submariners, like the 5513 for me is up there from that. So uh, we got Rich Mitch, one more super chat. Thank you so much, Rich Mitch. Really appreciate the support. 2 British pounds. Really appreciate the watch talk, man. Yeah, look, I've been trying to steer the show in the watch direction. I kindly asked Skyzen, who just got the book, to share if he could, and he was generous enough to help us out. So we got it all today. For our European and UK fans. What's next, Skyzen, in the book?
It goes either down to a Sea Dweller, the 1665, or up to the 1514 Comex.
Whatever you like, Skies. And why don't you
Let's
you take
let's
us where
go
you
for
like, and
Sea
then
Dweller.
let's
Sea
go.
Dweller.
Yeah, let's change it up a bit. Sea Dwellers, the 1665, very very famous Sea Dweller. I don't. I'm not so familiar with Sea Dwellers. I know there's one called like the Great White. I think that might be the 1665, and obviously there's the double red Sea Dwellers as well. Um, so 1665, production number 22,000, released 1967. So think of that period of what we just showed of um, the Submariner, the Submariner 5513 in 1962. This is 5 years later. Rolex is pretty, I would say, pretty established in the dive watch category, and now expanding the portfolio. Again, we're still in a period of this being a tool watch. We are entering the period of when Rolex is kind of transitioning the Submariner from a tool only watch to being both a tool watch and a luxury piece. And here I can see them expanding the Sea Dweller range, because obviously leaning in on the whole dive aspect of what's been popular in that era in the 60s. Rich Mitch, £2 British. Thank you again. Mine's just silver date, but original bracelet. Oh, cool. It's all good, man. It's all good. Pull routers are cool. Anybody's got a pull router is good in my books. You know what you're talking about, and you have good taste. All right, so Sea Dweller 1665. What's next?
There we go.
All right, Submariner 5514 Comex. I believe also, Skyson, that the 5514s also had some military issue for the British military, because there's both the 5514 and the 5517, and I
Yeah.
believe a few 5513s were also. I could be wrong, but I believe a few 5513s. So 5514, 5517, and 5513s. I believe were the ranges that you would find the military submariners or the mil subs. And yeah, just again, really cool piece. Comex edition here. You can see um, launched in 1969. Production quantity very low, only 1,618. At a period of time when we're seeing 5513s at 100,000 and all these other ones for really big production quantities. Um, Very similar. Now you can see here we've gone to 40 mil. We moved away from the 37 mil era when we get into these 5 digit digit references and whatnot. Surdy Danny just tuned in. He said just tuned in. For some reason, Sea Dweller never got the love it deserved, although it's far more superior to the Submariner. Look, it's. I think the Submariner is so iconic. It's like it is the icon. It's not like it's one of the icons in the Rolex range. It is the icon. It arguably the icon in all of watches is the Submariner. It's I would be hard pressed to find another watch that is more iconic than the Rolex Submariner. So I think, Danny, that's why, even though, like, I agree with you that you got a superior piece in the Sea Dweller. A lot of folks don't like the Cyclops. They like the cleaner look of the Sea Dweller. And yeah, just
The only other one I'd say, Tan, would be the Pussy Galore, the 6542,
yeah,
which on a
yeah.
Blackman Warrior, a Goldfinger.
Yeah, Skyzen's referring to the original GMT Master 6542, the Pussy Galore Pepsi, with the Bakelite bezel, beautiful piece, guys, and one of my favorites. Yeah, no, I would agree. Like, there's an argument to be had on many sides. I think in Danny's comment here, I think it's more related to the fact that, like, you're just competing with the icon, right? It's like, Skyzen, if we use a similar example of the Explorer 2 and the GMT, right?
Yeah.
It's the same situation, right? Like, the Explorer 2 is just not it's not loved when it should be, because, it's not superior, but, for what it is and the bang per buck it is, it should be a heck of a lot more popular than it is, in
To
my
me,
opinion.
it's their last real tool watch that they've come out with
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
before. So,
I don't want your hands to get strained here, guys, and so we can keep
yeah, we're
going out.
going on to the first date model next.
All right, we're stepping into some serious history, guys. So now we moved on to what's called the Submariner date. So if you're calling it a no date Submariner, you're calling it wrong. You got the Submariner, and now we've got the Submariner date. This, to me, is the starting point of luxury Submariners. Rolex has now put a date onto the Submariner. It didn't have a date before. The Submariner now actually came in solid gold as well. Um, that is a staple. That is a statement of it being a luxury piece. Rolex 1680. This is famously known, for the earlier ones as the red sub. 1680, 111,226. Had a decent production run. It ran into the 70s. I know that. I think it didn't last until the 80s. I think we had the transitional model 16800 after this one. 1575 movement, very classic movement. Pretty easy movement to fix, by the way. So if you buy I owned a 1680 red sub Mark IV dial. Beautiful piece. Super easy to service if you don't want to send it to Rolex. Still, relatively easy to get parts because there was a lot of these made. Go for it, guys, and show us what's next.
Then, as you said, it's the gold model.
All right, so they separated. So interestingly enough, Nick Folkestone separates the steel version from the gold in here. Really cool, really interesting. I mean, low production, 5,765 of the 1680. I know Danny loves his 1680s. He's saying they are fire. I love a gold 1680. I think this is cool. It's very iconic. It's the reason why I would buy the 1680. I know that this guy's, and a lot of people hate the 1803 date from the 60s because it's no quick set anything. I would agree with that, but I think in this case, it really, when you have a solid gold subby in the 1680, it was like, this is the statement piece that Rolex was saying. We are now a luxury brand. We are no longer just a tool watch brand. Like we're selling luxury here, right?
Exactly. So
All
it's a
right.
lovely piece.
All right.
And I heard as well, Jack Cousteau used to wear one, and
Yeah.
and then he'd go diving with his solid gold 1680 back in the day.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Jacques Cousteau was obviously heavily involved with the creation of the Submariner and being consulted in the design of the Submariner. So yeah, I mean, obviously for him being tied to it makes sense for him to wear Submariner. And what better of a Submariner to wear in the 60s than a solid gold Submariner? I don't think it's it's bad at any time. We're getting into, I think, a fan favorite here for a lot of our British fans. A big favorite for me. I know T and Tickers loves them. We're getting to the military Submariners 5517. You can tell military Submariner here, the sword hands. Usually
That's
the
got
insert
sword hand.
sword hands, right? So the 5517s, and you see here it's on the NATO, right? So military
Fixed lug bars.
fixed lug bars, issued for a specific purpose. Super cool. Launched in 1977. Only 539. These used to be, I've heard, this is before my time of collecting, like really cheapest chips, guys, and people would have desk drawers full of them because nobody
Yeah,
wanted them. That's wild to me, man.
yeah, they're selling them at the military auctions, like in buckets worth, and then people were converting them back, taking the sword hands off and converting them back to Mercedes hands, and now they don't realise because of that low production of just over. I need to go Specsavers tan.
Yeah,
But yeah,
well, it's funny because Mo doesn't like the sword hands, but Mo, for anybody that's a big fan of the military Submariner, that is what's unique about it, right?
and they were issued to the SAS and SBS only, then ones,
Yeah,
which
so
I was reading.
yeah, so if they're with the military elite, right?
Yeah,
It's just cool to have it original and be original and be functional for the purpose that it was made that way. And again, NATO strap, fixed lug bars, cool. Only 500 made. For those to be cheapest chips, I'm really curious, guys, and obviously since the release of this book, on how these production numbers influence certain references. Danny just tuned in, and it's like he I was showing earlier the 6536 and the 6538 that he loves. I mean, they're the same production year. They look very similar. One doesn't have the big crown, but one was produced in 5,000 numbers and the other one in 2,800. And the 6536 is so much cheaper on the secondary that it's if you just want to get one of these, get the 6536. So really, really interesting on these production numbers.
did you look at this one at BQ when you came to London?
I
Spencer
didn't.
had one of these.
Yeah, he did. I didn't get to pull that one out. I really
That's the one I got to pull out.
yeah, I didn't. I think I might have seen it when you may have had it. I think I maybe pulled up when I saw you looking at some watches. I looked at the SAS, the modern sub, right? Probably like a 114060 or something like that. Um, I looked at a modern SAS. Or I think it was maybe it was a reconnaissance. It was a special reconnaissance. So that's
Yeah,
the S.
that was it, the special reconnaissance one.
Yeah, he had the special reconnaissance one. So it just look at the front, it's a regular sub, and obviously in the back you got the engraving. I actually had asked the girl if she could show me the card because the card is important because it actually says, it was from Rolex London, and it actually is written on the card special reconnaissance. So, and she obviously said, "Hey, can you just not show the card on stream?" I'm like, "Yeah, no problem." But it was cool to see. So yeah, really, really cool. Sea Dweller 16660, production year 1978. We're getting into now neo vintage. 16,854. Still what I would consider skies in relatively low production. Classic movement 3035. Again, Sea Dweller. I think there's a lot of Sea Dweller fans in the chat. And yeah, we want to make sure that we actually have a full view of all these production numbers for you guys. So if you're just tuning in, Skies and Boys has received the book from the Rolex Submariner book that he bought, Silk Edition, first edition, and we're getting firsthand to see what these production numbers look like. Where to next, guys?
Next page.
Next page.
There we go.
Ooh, we got a lot of references here. Okay, 16800. This is a transitional model where we're transitioning from acrylic to sapphire. Launch year 1979, 81,694. So we're ramping up production. Still 16800, not a very loved reference, guys. This has always been a sweet spot if you were looking for a subby on the cheap, right? Like 16800 was always kind of like you could always find a deal here. So I would be looking into these if you're looking for a specific cheap deal. I'd be looking at 16800. It's a really cool piece.
I think Timothy Dalton in his last Bond film, License to Kill, wore one of these because he wore a Tag Her Night Diver in the first movie, and I think he wore one of these. I read.
I think you're right. Actually, I think you're right. So, yeah, Timothy Dalton, great James Bond actor. One of my favorites. I know it's not popular. I like License to Kill. I love Living Daylights. Not everybody likes it. But yeah, that's super cool. And yeah, that's actually quite right. Dear Artifact, Patel, 2024 is the 70th anniversary of the sub. Rolex releases this history of the sub book, and Federer just recently wore a vintage sub. Coincidence? I think Rolex is bringing a new sub soon. Yeah, you know what? Like Rolex, obviously, 70th anniversary. They've dropped a lot of really cool anniversary models. If they're people, okay. So the question is, are they bringing out a new sub? And what does new sub mean, right? Like the Submariner's always been. It's like the Porsche 911, right? It's evolution over revolution. Can they have different colors? Sure. But they already have different colors, right? That's also, I think, a point we need to understand. There's a Starbucks, there's obviously the standard, black dial. You got, blue in the bluesy. You've got, you've got variations, right? And so maybe they do a color. Do I think that they would do a vintage inspired piece? I wish they do. I wish they put back the red triangles, guys, and I wish they kind of did a few cool things. What would that look like for you guys in it? The 70th anniversary, what would you want Rolex to release, if they're releasing a new sub?
I'd like them to go back to the 6538 big crown with the red triangle.
That'd be great. No crown guards. Obviously we would still demand proper water resistance. We would demand all the new tech, but yeah, no crown guard. That'd be super cool, man. Look, that would absolutely fly off the shelves. It would be a cool retro.
Or even a pencil hands on it. Maybe change it up a bit with pencil hands.
Exactly. Well, one thing I do know, dear Artifact, I know somebody who's very close to the inside of Rolex, and they tell me that Rolex does not give a fuck what we all say, so they just kind of do what they do. Dirk Diggler's asking you guys, and how much is the book, and do you think it's worth it for the price?
I think it's worth it for the price. I paid £100 sterling, which obviously it's the Silk Limited one, but I've seen on eBay and Amazon you can get it for as low as £78, like sterling.
Yeah, look, I think for anybody who's who isn't
If you're a
typically
subby fanboy, then you're going to love it.
exactly like if you're. I was gonna say if you're either a Rolex collector, like Bear or Mark Goldberg or Marcelo, right? Like 100%, they're gonna buy this book. If you're a Submariner collector, obviously you're gonna buy this book. Um, not everybody buys watch books, and I think why I would say this is worth it, Dirk. Number one, you get all these reference numbers and the production numbers in there, but you get tons of like adverts I saw in the book and everything. I was like, super cool book, man. I would say for $100 some, like just go for it. Um, Brian Tone is saying 1979 to 2023, 81,694 made, or in 2023 alone. No, these are, Brian, not all these models went to 2023. These are within the range. So, for example, Skyzen has up here on the screen Submariner 16808, production year 1979. We see a gold sub, 5,988. So, the one problem, Brian, I said where Nick Folks kind of, I think, just missed the mark was he didn't show the year period. So it says 1979, but that could be 1979 to 1989, right? We don't know that. So no, it's not to 2023. It's whenever that period was done.
Yeah,
That
it's not. Yeah, it's not. So you get to the next model that you then click. Oh yeah, that was done in '89 and it runs to 2012. Say with the 14060.
yeah, absolutely. I think you're
It's
spot
kind
on.
of letting you try and use a bit of brain power to work it out when it was discontinued. And then for all the bluesy boys out there, the first bluesy.
Bluesy. 1983, 30,239 produced of the Bluesy. One of the channel favorites. I know fan favorites. Look, I'm not a two-tone guy. I always kind of bust Watchets Brian's balls about buying like 8 two-tone watches, even though the 5980 he bought was like one of my favorites. But look, one two-tone I absolutely love is the Bluesy, like super cool. JR Artifacts asking or saying, Patel, how about this? Bifurcate the line, and like they did with the Explorer, bring in a 37 mil sub reissue with red triangle with the modern build, make it extremely rare. Yeah, they could do that. I don't think the sub is look the Explorer, the 39 Explorer is a more of a modern thing, right? The Explorer has historically been 36 for like ever. Whereas in the sub, as you've seen what Skyzen has been kindly enough to show us, the sub went from 37 or what Nick Foles calls his 38 to 40, within maybe 10 years, right? Like, and they've been since the 60s has been a 40 mil watch. So, I don't think they would do that. Could they do that? Absolutely. Would it be a hit? Absolutely. I just don't see them doing that because I think it's just not in the sub's DNA to be a smaller watch. Everybody's favorite 16610 pre-ceramic. We're in neo vintage 1986. Here's some serious figures: 646,613. So now we're getting into the era of like your Rolex ain't really that rare, guys.
That'd be the first sapphire crystal version, I think.
We've got Dodger in the chat, 10 post love notes chiming in saying he's wearing his 16610 flooded out here. Well, Dodger, hopefully you're well and you're staying dry, my friend. Obviously we appreciate you listening, giving you some content, some excitement, some entertainment today. 646,613, of which the Dodger is wearing one right now. Super cool. And yeah, so Toyota Mo is saying you get the Silkbound limited edition when you order from Wallpaper. I think that's what I'm going to do. Because I do think Skyzen sold me on this. So I think it's gonna be well worth it.
It
What's
was
next,
Ali
guys?
Reza that sold it. It was Ali Reza that sold it to me when he done some research and come back and said the Amazon copy wasn't the silk bound. So
Okay,
that's when I thought, fuck it, might as well get the original one.
we love Ali Rez's, so all good. 16613 LN. So LN is black dial, or I mean lunette noir. Black dial, 1986, 106,815. Again, so we have the blue. So different, production value of the production numbers of the Bluesy compared to the black dial. This is an interesting
Just gonna
thing.
have to adjust myself a little bit.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, take your time. Take your time. If you want to take a break too, guys, and we can take a break, I can go through some of these models a little bit easier if you want.
Just
Yeah, look, let me pull up the layout here that I have. So we looked at a couple of these pieces already. The 5510. We're in the classic sub era. This is, I think, what I would say that Dear Artifact is talking about. This is what he would love to see I would agree this would be absolutely bonkers if Rolex released something this, even if it's limited edition. I wouldn't want it to be limited edition to your artifact because I mean we can't stand Marcelo getting something more limited edition here. Like he'll probably get it. So I think Skyzen's all set up again. So we'll pull back up here for Skyzen. Um,
And then
all right, so we just saw the LN, and now we're looking at the Bluesy. So significantly more produced the Bluesy than the LN model. Same year, 1986, I believe, 200, almost 300,000 produced. What I really believe, and hopefully Danny's listening as well. I really believe in the Bluesy. This is great bang per buck right now. Both this and the solid gold model, which I think is probably coming up next. I think these are pretty cheap, pretty good bang per buck. Solid gold model, 16618, 20,000 produced. Yeah, just really cheap. Really cheap, and there's not a lot of these that were made. I think I've asked Archie about this, and he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "Get the ceramic, don't get the." A lot of people look guys, and they don't like the clasps of these, neo vintage and vintage pieces, and I get it, right? Like, but to me, it's, skies, and there's a bit of charm to that. It's a different
it's
era.
part of the romance, I'd say, Tan. All part of the romance of having a vintage or neo vintage sub, having the clasp and the jingly jangly bracelet, as everyone likes to put it.
Yeah, for me, it's exactly how you described it, right? Is if you're a child of that era, right? Like, I mean, I was born in the '80s. When I think, sitting in the backseat of a car and the smell of the cars in the '80s and whatnot, um, you want to relive that somewhat, right? And that is really the appeal of vintage is being able to relive that. It's not going to, you buy a vintage car, it's going to be nowhere near even a car that's neo vintage or even n- 10 years old will be completely slow compared to anything that's being produced today. So the point, like you said, Skyzen, is the emotion. It's less about the functionality, and I get it. Everybody loves. I love. I'm wearing my Explorer 40 again today. I love the modern Oyster clasp bracelet and Oyster clasp and the Oyster bracelet. I think they're amazing. All right, 16618 is what we saw. What do you think next? All right, Sea Dweller for the boys, 16600, 1986, 176,602 produced. So probably way less compared to the 600,000 of sub dates that they created for Dodger. So very
But
again,
for a Seeds Weller, that's really bumped up in production, hasn't it? Because the other ones are out like in the 20,000s.
and I
The
think it's
Seeds Weller.
you know what I think, guys, and it's also by design. I think that this like everybody mentioned, the Sea Dweller is no slouch. It's no shit watch. It is a great watch. And I do think that Rolex, was able to expand, their customer base by finding a buyer that liked a watch that didn't have a Cyclops, that had the Submariner look, and was arguably a better piece, right? So yeah, totally makes sense. Super cool. All right, let's see where we're gonna go next. All right, now we're getting into the Submariner 14060. I think obviously pre-ceramic. Um, this is kind of surprisingly low. I think unless they're gonna break it up into the 14060M, and I don't know
Yeah,
if you get yeah.
that does come next, the M.
Okay. That makes sense.
But this was their first version with a 904L stainless steel as well when they converted over.
And I think that's a great point, right? I think and even Danny's pointing out, the glide lock.
Ceramic crystal as well. Sorry, keep buttoning that.
Yeah, like when you're getting a sapphire crystal, you're getting a 904L steel, right? Like we talked yesterday about with Marcelo with the Smurf being the first Rolex with the glide lock, right? Like when we start looking back into vintage and people start hunting, because when you hunt in vintage, you hunt for certain things that are specific, right? Rare and specific and potentially desirable, right? Like 904L steel, I think is really picking up. I think a lot of people they've sold that really well. Like, when you look at the sheen of 904L steel, it is something else compared to just standard steel. So yeah, I think it's a good point, but let's see what the M looks like. This was
And as
93,000.
well, it's the last of the tritium dials that they stopped in '98. They stopped producing tritium dials.
All right, we're going into Luminova, I believe, right? So
Yeah, here we go.
all right, so the M model, we went through this yesterday. I believe they have a different movement, 3130, 130,000. So almost similar, maybe 30% more. of the M version, 40 mils. We're getting into close to the ceramic era, super case, maxi dial that everybody knows, the beautiful 40 mils ceramics. But I'm a big fan of these pre-ceramics. I think that they're great buying. There's great value for money, and I just need people to get past the clasp, guys. Like, understand it's a vintage watch. It's meant to be that way. That's the
For me,
charm of
it's
it.
my favourite sub because it's the last of the old style cases. You still got aluminium bezel, but obviously you get the advantages of sapphire crystal and 904L stainless steel.
Absolutely, guys, and I think that that's a fantastic point, because for me, what really lacks in these ceramic Submariners, whether it's the 40 mil or the 41, which I've both owned, um, is you just can't, like, take off the bracelet and throw on a NATO and it look fine, right? Or I think the only thing it looks good on is maybe like a rubber B or something like
Yeah.
that, or an Everest. I think it only looks good on those.
And
It doesn't
plus
look
the
great.
later version, sorry, Tan, the later versions of the M, they
Mhm.
stopped doing the drilled lugs as well.
Honestly, I was a fan of the drilled lugs because it's just so
I'm a
much
fan of
easier.
the drilled lugs. It's more totally aesthetics,
Yeah,
or
it's just so
aesthetic,
much.
should I say.
It's just so much easier to get, just get the straps off. But yeah, I agree. I love swapping straps on these Submariners. All right, we got the famous Kermit 16610 Lunette Vert, which means green in French. 128,835 of the Kermits. Okay, okay, not super rare. Produced in similar numbers to either the 1040 or 1040M. So yeah, not super rare. Again, everybody, like, they go into this variant and they find like sub variants like the flat 4 and other variants, right? So um interesting. But this is where I think Skies in this book may have some impact in the market, where people actually see how much production is actually out there on pieces that arguably, like, when you talk about flat 4s and you talk about these other sub variants of the Kermit, it could affect values, in my opinion.
So there's even different colour variations on the Kermit as well, isn't there, with a green bezel?
That's right. That's right. So again, I think the Kermit collectors have made a little, like, subdivision of the Kermit, and there's little sub variants that you can collect within it. I'm just wondering whether these large production numbers are going to affect their values, where they're just not that rare, and as demand may curtail, because again, people buy what they remember, and I think this is a very important thing for everybody to understand. Is you know people that are dreamers today, they're not collectors today. They're just watch enthusiasts. They're dreamers. They dream of having a ceramic. I think Swiss, said this before. Somebody asked him, like, what is sought after in Geneva from the average collector? And he says, look, everybody wants a Nautilus, but everybody also wants a ceramic sub. And so when you think, like, the kids are going to remember, the dreamers are going to remember the ceramic sub, what happens to these Kermits that, like, people don't like the bracelet, they don't like the clasp, like, you know what I mean? So in these large production numbers, I think is probably a recipe for these to go down.
With the larger production numbers, you're better off either having like the first edition of the 2003 or the last edition in 2010 stroke 2011.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I just kind of shy away from this. It's never been. It's funny because I was talking to Higgins the other day about it, and I told him I didn't like the Kermit, and he was like appalled. And I'm like, I just don't like the Kermit, man. I'm sorry, it's just not. It's not for me. So we got the black dial Submariner gold sub 116618 LN, 2008, only 7,113. So obviously you're seeing these black dial gold subs are pretty rare, man. Like, they're not produced in very big quantities, and you don't see a ton of people wearing them. Maybe because of that, right?
First ceramics as well, isn't it? Ceramic bezels with this model.
Ceramic bezels, yep, absolutely. We got Danny saying, remember that, though, just because that many were watch produced, it doesn't mean that many survive. Yeah, absolutely. I think that applies, Danny, when we're thinking about more like the vintage era. I think in neo vintage, watch collecting was a thing around neo vintage, right? So that's why you do see more full sets, box and papers, all this jazz. Um, so I think that, yeah, I don't think as many maybe were destroyed.
Other
Um,
with the gold ones, a lot of them got smelted for a price of gold, didn't they? Back in the day.
Yeah, it's. I think that's maybe what Danny's referring to, and it's a very valid point. I think it even adds to the coolness of all the stuff, right? Is is just thinking about like how many are actually still out there.
But you notice the production jumps up with the blue one.
Yeah, the production of the black one, I think, was around
Let's go
7,000.
back to black. Yeah,
Yeah,
7,000.
Yeah, 7,000. So we're talking about almost a more than a 50% increase from the black dial to the blue dial in terms of
And
production.
then for Marcelo.
Oh, the Smurf, baby. This is an interesting part. The Smurf producing even more. So if you're thinking the Smurf is producing double the quantity as the black dial. Now, obviously both black dial and Smurf not really popular models, but this is probably adding or contributing to the factor of the Smurf in comparison to other models of that range not being really that rare. However, I do still feel that the Smurf has upward potential because it is so low right now that, I mean, this is the first watch with a glide lock clasp. Like, there is an iconic level to it. This blue dial on the Smurf has not been seen on another, Submariner since. So I think that there's just some level of collectability when it's only 13,000. All right, so we're getting into we got the Deep Sea 11660. 116660, 2008, 123,000. Does that surprise you guys? And that many were deep seas were produced? Like Sea Dwellers, maybe, but deep seas is a bit surprising to me.
Is that because it's got the James Cameron dial in with that as well?
I'm not sure. I was going to ask that question if Nick Folks had separated the James Cameron edition versus this, but if he hasn't, then yeah, that could probably be the contribution to it. I would say, yeah.
And then back to move the book across.
All right, we've got now we got the two-tone black dial, 104,000. Cool, obviously ceramic bezel, 2009. Not everybody's favorite, just like the the gold sub black dial. To me, still a cool piece. I think that I think the black and the yellow gold really mesh well together. Seen one in person, love it, looks great. Nothing against it. If you can get these on a discount, compared to the blue, and the blue doesn't really bother you that you're getting the black dial, or you prefer it, like, that's a score for you.
And then Archie's watch.
All right, we got the Archie Luxury, the bluesy, 143,000. So obviously, a lot more than the black dial. That's not surprising. We've seen that, guys, and throughout all of Rolex's production, as we've shown today, that the black dial, even though surprisingly enough, the black dial was the original, right? Because I think we showed that in the 1680 skies, and that the black dial was the original gold sub. But obviously, when you compete with blue, it's tough, right? This should also tell us something, though. That blue has stood the test of time in terms of desirability, in terms of even Rolex themselves producing more in the blue. So that should tell you something that, hey, number one, maybe not a collectible, I think, in the black dial, but really just it's always I think it's going to be an opportunity for a good score.
And then production really ramps up here.
Ooh, still, I'm going to call out Dodger. Hopefully, Dodger, you're not, you're not in any flooding areas, or you're dry. You're by a fire maybe. We've got the 116610 LN. So we got the 40 mil ceramic sub date. That is the follow-up model to the one Dodger was wearing. Has less production though, because Dodgers had like 600,000 of the 16610, whereas the 116610 is at 400,000. So that is actually very interesting. We got a super chat from Dodger, who is listening. 20 post love notes. Thank you so much, Dodger. Who says, enjoying these shows. Back to what it's all about. Absolutely, man. And super big thank you to Skyzen for showing this. It's not easy for him to hold up that camera for minutes on, is when I'm rambling on to give you guys content here. All right, we've got the Hulk, everybody's favorite, the one that I've heard this on Watch YouTube over the last couple of days, where people are like, well, the Hulk isn't as rare as people think it is. Nobody thought the Hulk was rare, guys. Like, the Hulk was a dog for a long time. I bought the Hulk when it was a dog. The Hulk that I own, is like a 2014 model. I bought it super early. It started launch year 2010. I have a 2014 model, so not anywhere near the end of the cycle in the Hulk. And when the time I bought it, it just was a dog. Nobody wanted this watch, but Rolex was still pumping them out, baby, pumping them out, because hey, to them it's all about the green, and they can sell the story of the anniversary green and all that jazz. So 200.
And then we're going to the lowest production run of the lot.
All right, so we looked at this one. We talked about this one the other day. Very, very rare Submariner reference. 116649 EMBR. So we've got emeralds, and I'm assuming that's diamonds, maybe emeralds and diamonds. Now
Yeah,
we've
on the
got
bracelet there's diamonds, you can see.
yep. So emeralds and diamonds we got there. We got 18 karat white gold. Only 51 of these produced. 2010. Like, look, if there's only 51 produced, number one, even at the time, it was very, very difficult, probably to get. Probably wasn't super popular. It was likely an off catalog model. You had to know, or you had to be high enough on status to ask. We're saying hello to Timepiece Bob. Nice to see you, Timepiece Bob. Um, we've got so when people look at it and say, "Oh, we're seeing these like these models in the hundreds of thousands," and you got one at 51. Look, it's still an expensive model. You ain't gonna buy that. You ain't gonna get this at like for 10 grand, guys. Like these are still hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think it's gonna stay niche, Skies, and I don't think this is ever gonna be popular or be sought after. It was niche when it came out. I think it's gonna remain niche, anyways.
Yeah, it's a collector's piece, as they say.
But I think
Yeah,
I would believe that's the lowest production subby probably in the book. Is that one, I believe.
yeah, that is correct.
All right, so we got the ceramic 40 mil Submariner. Sorry, Skies. I don't know if you. I don't know if that was me or if that was. Yep.
No, I think I fat fingered the phone.
Okay, no worries, man. No worries. We got the ceramic ceramic Submariner, or the what everyone calls the no date. 150. So again, look at the numbers here. The date Submariner 400,000. The standard Submariner no date 153,000. So the date Submariner is obviously popular, very, very popular, big demand. Always been a smaller demand for the just the classic sub, which is super interesting because I know a lot of us watch enthusiasts. We love the classic Submariner. We love the symmetry of the dial. Skies and obviously this is one of my favorites. I've owned one of these 40 mils. Loved it. Amazing watch.
Yeah, even JJ's just picked one of these up recently because he prefers the clasp of the 40 mil
hmm Yeah,
compared to the 41.
I would agree with JJ. Right, like the bracelet tapers better, clasp is smaller. Look, the maxi case was always like this is the super case time, right? Like we're in the super case, and the super case was very contentious because when they go to the 41 mil, Rolex slims down the lugs and just makes it less chunky, I think. But that was a big concern because like Skyzen and I were saying, pre-ceramics that we like the fact that like the case just looks great, Skyzen, when you throw it on a NATO. Um, it's way more proportional, in my opinion.
It's definitely a bigger strap monster with a non-ceramic.
Just want to say hi to Zeppy. He says, loving my Everose Yachtmaster 40. Great watch on Oyster Flex. Awesome watch. Would love that for the summer, Zeppy. Bracelet is possibly the most comfortable out of all them all. Glad I got the call from my ID. Congrats to you, Zeppy. Appreciate you. Glad you're listening in. Now we're on the Sea Dweller 116600. 27,000. Again, comparing this to watches that are produced in the hundreds of thousands in the Submariner, Sea Dweller still remains a low production. And look, for collectors, the Sea Dweller range may be one that can either bring bang per buck, as well as an interest if it ever gets popularized, which it can be as people see this book and maybe get influenced to buy one. All right, now we're getting into the more modern movements. We got the 12600. I think is this the Sea Dweller 40?
Anniversary one?
Yep, Sea Dweller
The
43.
anniversary one, yeah.
Yep. So this is the red Sea Dweller, the red tech Sea Dweller, with the I believe this one has a Cyclops, right? This is the one with the Cyclops on the Sea Dweller.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first time we're seeing a Cyclops on a Sea Dweller. I remember when this watch came out, I was streaming with Archie back then in 2017, and at that time everybody thought that Rolex was going to revive the red sub. There was talk of the red sub, and Rolex did give us the red text, but just not on the sub. They gave it on the Sea Dweller, which again, still iconic, right? You still have the double red Sea Dweller. It's still an iconic and historic thing. But then they throw on the Cyclops on the Sea Dweller, and that just kind of like a lot of people didn't like that because you were just there on the tradition, and then you fucked around with the formula, right? So,
And plus, Tudor done it with the left-handed Pelagos, put red text.
yeah, like and for me,
Exactly the same year as well, Tan. Funny
okay,
enough.
okay, interesting. I didn't know that. This watch is still good buying, I think. Today, you can get this watch pretty cheap, or cheaper. I think it goes under retail, or is hovering either close or under. I don't know. It has always been, this one's always been pretty good buying. So I've tried one on. I like it. I like the size. I think it's a super cool watch. Definitely cool. We're getting into sapphire models, sapphire and diamond models, Submariner. So obviously 18 karat white gold, 771. Still, I mean, this is more than 10 times more production than that emerald one we saw. So again, if you are in this collecting group of, Submariners with gems set, and you want the white gold ones, obviously you're probably looking at the emerald one because it's less produced. But hey, maybe you like sapphires, you want to go with the sapphire one. So yeah, probably not for everybody, but we understand why this is low production.
And then there is a James Cameron right there.
Okay, so they separated it. That was the big question, Skyson, was like, were they including the production number to be it with the James Cameron or not? They obviously
And all.
separated because the James Cameron's the 12660, production year 2018, 88,000. That doesn't surprise me. This is a popular model. I think if you're looking to get into the Sea Dweller range, people often like to go with the big ones, as well as if you got a big wrist and you want to get into Rolex. A lot of people like the larger size 44 mils. Again, this watch really kind of reaches the edge for me of like what I would wear. Would I wear one? Absolutely love the James Cameron. I think I just wouldn't be able to wear bigger than this.
And then the first two-tone Sea Dweller.
Okay, so we got the two-tone Sea Dwellers. Obviously, half the production makes sense. We've seen this, not historic. Two-tone's not really my favorite, and again, it's black dial, right? Two-tone with black dial has never really been popular at Rolex, anyways. So not surprised. It's half the production. Don't really think it's that popular of a watch. So, but still cool piece. Like it.
A big fan is Curly. That's his go-to watch if he'd get one. He was
Yeah.
staying on it.
What I know about people that I know a lot of people that own two-tone Rolex with a black dial, or even gold Rolex with a black dial, and those individuals, like that, it just speaks to them, right? That just catches their eye. I mean, Curly's been around the Archieverse for a long enough time now to have seen everything from grand complications to stainless steel Rolexes, right? So if he's gravitating to this, it's just caught his eye. So I'm not surprised, but I think that the wider collecting public always knows if there's a bluesy, they're going to go for the bluesy.
Exactly.
And okay, so now we are at the 41 mil Submariner. Obviously, bigger clasp. The case has been reshaped from the super case to the newer case. I do feel that the case is more proportional in the 41. I would agree with JJ on the clasp. I always thought that was my first reaction when I put on the 41 mil sub. I bought the sub date, not the Submariner. And the first thing I noticed was the clasp. I was like, I just wish it was smaller. So I would agree with that. But 82,000, I guarantee this is way less than the sub dates are going to be. So let's see where we go from here.
And plus, these are still current models at the moment, so then production numbers will go up, won't they?
They will, and obviously you can see here significantly more Submariner dates that are in the current production year 2020. So this would be up until right now that we hear for we see for these models. Not inherently rare. Again, there have been other models, like we're gonna keep poking fun at Dodger. His 16610, the pre-ceramic, had like 400,000 made, and we're not even halfway there on the 41 mil. So the Dodge will be the owner of the more common ones. You can troll him on now. All right, we've got the above that is the Starbucks, 103,000. Again, not inherently rare. To me, the Starbucks, it shouldn't be rare. I think this should just be do you want a bit of color, a splash of color on your sub, or do you not? Right? It should be at the same production level as a Submariner date, standard Submariner date black dial. And yeah, to me, it's just that's the way I see it. I don't see it like the Hulk, where the Hulk had a completely different dial, a sunburst gold green dial. Like This is just your sub with a an insert. So it's like, to me, this should just be similar production, but not a special, or viewed as a special piece, I guess. All right, we're going to the all right. So similar to before, we got a two-tone black dial, 54,000. Again, if we show the blue, I'm sure the blue is going to be made in way more pieces. Again, it's more of a, if you like it, you like a piece. Nothing crazy there. Bluesy. Um, More popular. Obviously the 41 mil model. 78,000 is probably going to go up from there. Comparing these to older models, you can see obviously the production's ramped up in them, but it's just interesting to me to see like the variance within the years, like how many different models they were making and why they were different, because that tells us the popularity, right? Like we don't have a like Skyzen, we don't have a kind of finger in the air guess right now because we just see more of them. Now we actually have figures that say, well, no, like the bluesies were made way more than the black dials were. Right?
Yeah, it gives us actual evidence instead of just guesstimating, as they'd
Yeah, man.
say.
Yeah, man. That's why I really appreciate you obviously doing this. It definitely can't be comfortable holding that camera up there, so we can try to get through this quicker for you. But I do
Right,
appreciate
we
you.
only got 6 models left.
Okay, cool. So let's get through them. Obviously we got black dial, gold sub 6,000. Obviously these gold pieces are made in way less quantity than the two tone pieces we're seeing. So that also tells you something when you see a gold sub, inherently rare. Only 6,000 of these are in the world right now. So by design, you may not ever encounter one of these. Or if you're in
And then
Vegas, you may encounter a ton of them, right? Whereas you're seeing this one double the production almost here, Skyzen, on the blue to the black. So when you look at the bluesy here, double the production, still low. I mean, only 11,000 produced. Granted, 13,000 Smurfs were produced. So, we'll probably get a lot more of these 41 mil bluesies that you're going to see around.
yeah,
But
and there's only 200 difference with the Cookie Monster.
this is an interesting one. This is why I would say the Cookie Monster is, if you want to buy a gold Rolex, the Smurf is obviously a great choice, and the Cookie Monster, in my opinion, could also be a good choice because, again, like Skyzen pointed out, very similar production to the Bluesy. Um, Not really a popular watch. Because again, why is it not popular? Where it looks like a stainless steel Rolex Submariner, like, unless you know that like the blue bezel, the blue insert is the gold one, like, which most people don't. You're really buying this for yourself, and there's not a lot of Rolex collectors that really just do that. The majority of people that buy Rolexes want to show off that it's gold. So yeah, this could be good buying if you really want to enjoy a gold watch, but are okay with it not being yellow gold or rose
Especially
gold.
way under retail now.
Yeah,
You can pick them up for about 28,000 in the UK.
yeah, absolutely right, absolutely. I think that these would be great, great buying. Um, All right, now we've got into the Rolex Deep Sea 136 660 production year 2022, 27,000. Not surprised. Deep Sea's obviously been niche, like the Sea Dweller, to the range. Look, if you love them, you love them. Obviously, lower production. It's good to see that, because if you are a collector and you want to look for posterity and think what's cool, and from a low production perspective, the Sea Dwellers and the Deep Seas are definitely the ones with lower production. However, you know, if you're looking for a future classic, people buy what they remember. And I don't even remember this model, to be honest with you. Like, I don't really care about this model. It doesn't really resonate with me. So, in 20 years, am I going to want this model? I mean, unless someone's wearing it, it's super famous and it makes it popular, I don't think so.
And then to the brick.
Da-da-da-da. This is the one a lot of people, I think, have been waiting for, the Deep Sea Challenge. I wasn't sure if this would be included in the book, but it is. Deep Sea Challenge, launch year 2022, 1,200. I think that says 90. Is it 90 or 98? 1,000.
98.
1,298. Obviously, the first Rolex, produced in titanium production model, 50 millimeters, probably too big to wear, by anybody. I guarantee you, Buckley is going to show up in the chat and claim that he can wear the 50 mils. I don't think so. 50 mils is gonna be difficult for anybody to wear. I'm just trolling. It's all good. If you like this watch, cool piece. Obviously, super limited. Definitely has the potential of a future classic. It's quirky enough. It's not popular right now. Um, its size is what really limits its its range of people that would buy it. But look, the Rolex collector out there, that wants to have everything will probably want this in their collection. So, yeah, I think this one's always going to have a market. It just isn't popular right now.
And then the new.
All right, we've got the new blue gold sub, 2020. Gold Sea Dweller, Deep Sea. Sorry, Deep Sea. Now I'm getting confused here. So we got the solid gold Deep Sea. One of my favorite releases in 2024. I know that some people don't like the titanium that's on it. I think it's cool. I got nothing against it. Some people feel shortchanged on the gold. I mean, this is a massive piece of gold on your wrist. Probably wears like absolutely crazy. Undetermined right now at time of publication. That's cool. I appreciate them putting that in the book, because anybody who's enjoying this book, anybody who's asking why should they buy this book, I think, look, hey, this in and of itself, seeing the production numbers and what you can get from that, what you can deduce from it, what you can think and theorize, what's going to be, what's going to go up, what's going to go down, what's a good buy. Like I told Danny, 6536 production wise compared to the 653, great buying, I would say, on Chrono versus the other. Yeah, super cool, man. And thank you, Skyzen, for showing this. This was
I definitely prefer this to the Yachtmaster 2. Personally, for my preference.
Too, I like this watch. A lot of people don't like this watch. I really do. It's just gaudy. It's big. It's just it's unreasonable. It's not full gold. Like it's wild, man. It's just now you got all these.
Some of the adverts.
Yeah, just amazing, right? Like if you're a Rolex collector, right? Like how could you not want a book like this? Even if you don't want to read it, right? Like just looking at the ads, looking at the production numbers, like that in of itself is worth $100 and some, I would say. And look, it's great content for us, right? It's great content for us to chat about. It's fresh. It's a book, right?
Nemo.
There we go. A little Nemo watch. It's just cool to see, right? And Submariners are the coolest of the cool watches, I'd say, in the Rolex range. It's the one that like some people would say is just super boring. Others would say is super exciting because there's just so much breadth.
I have to put this phone down and I'll get in bad cramp.
Yeah. No problem. But yeah, look, it's super cool. I appreciate you showing that, guys, and I can actually show some of these models here for you guys because obviously we were, I wanted to not, obviously have a problem with Skyzen's arm being held up for like 2 hours. So I think Skyzen's gonna get a good forearm workout here for doing that.
I get that all the time, don't I, Tanks? Has been in the wheelchair, and my wheelchair's not electric either.
Well, we don't want to burden you, Skies, and we appreciate you sharing. You just got the book. I know you're excited. I was excited when you were showing it on Scratchies, and I'd already planned this, so I kindly asked Skies to join us. Super cool guy. Awesome for helping out the Archieverse. We got a $5 super chat from Zeppy. Nice to see Zeppy, as always. Appreciate it, Tan. A few shekels for Fat. So, yes, we do appreciate that. Today is kind of, I'm covering the Rolex Submariner with Skyzen. I'll show you guys a bit of, high-quality photos. Let's go all the way back to the vintage, all the way from the start here. So we went through the production numbers. Let's go through all the way up, all the way back. Come on. All right. So here we go. Here's the start. And in this article from Hodinkee, they say, 1953 was a big year for Rolex. And in this year, you see here on the left is the Turnograph, considered the father of the Submariner lineup. Was not a Submariner. It's written, on this piece, the Turnograph. I'm going to zoom in here for you guys to see that Turnograph. So not a Submariner, but the design of this piece, as everybody can see, is just that is the Submariner, right? You got Mercedes hands. You've got the timing bezel insert. You've got, the Mercedes, you just got the classic loom plots. Like this DNA is Submariner, right? Another big time piece that came out in 1953 in the middle is the Rolex Explorer. I'm wearing an Explorer 40 today. Loving the piece. You don't have to wear the most expensive piece out in the world to enjoy it. I know, Skyzen, you love your Tudor pieces. I've had the pleasure to see you wearing it and seeing the joy that piece brings to you, man. That's what the Explorer means to me. Hopefully, the Tudor, the Tudor you have is just, for me, it was super cool to see.
Yeah, I love my Tudor. I can bash it, and I ain't got to worry that I'm bashing it, scratching it, taking chunks out of it. It's there to be used, just like Marcelo likes to use all his watches.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of use what you have. I don't like safe queening anything. Um,
No.
yeah, and I do love to see people wearing their watches, enjoying their watches. And again, like I said, price points. Everybody's got a different budget, but everybody can enjoy these pieces all the same, right? Within your budget, you don't have to spend crazy money. I've spent crazy money on these things, and it doesn't bring you more happiness. Finding what you enjoy and what you love, and wearing the pieces, that's what's going to really give you happiness, I would say, in collecting. Um, and then on here on the right, guys, is the 6204. This is the first iteration. We're going to talk about the Submariner pencil hands, lollipop style second hand. Obviously, Submariner script at the bottom has the DNA. What I thought, when we showed it with Skyson, was the DNA of the Black Bay 54. I think, and yeah, just that's why I like the Black Bay 54 Skyson, because for me, like looking at it's really the bezel insert that gives it away. Um, I don't know. Have you had a chance to try on the Black Bay 54 at all, Skyson?
Yeah, I tried one and felt one at the AD.
Yeah, and look,
And
like
it,
it's a small watch, guys, and I'm not gonna bullshit nobody. It is a small watch. It's a 37 mil watch. Um, what I really like, guys, and I've owned one of these. I sold it, but I have owned one. Is the fact that the watch is a modern watch. It's got modern technology in it, but it's the only modern watch, guys, and honestly, that I've ever worn or bought that it actually feels like a vintage, because I've owned vintage watches, and that's the real appeal of the Black Bay 54. Is it's masterful in the way it actually feels like a vintage watch, but is completely usable as a modern watch. That's what I got out of it. I know it's not for everybody. It's a small piece. And if you got big wrists, it may look ridiculous, but hey, that's what I like about this watch.
it's like a modern vintage watch, which you can wear all the time and not worry about if you bash it, you're going to knock your movement and make your movement go out of time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So 6204, our first iteration we just showed, from 1953. Again, as I described, the insert very similar to the Black Bay 54. You got Submariner on the dial, gilt dial. Gilt meaning gold, gold dial. Super cool. Really really nice piece. You're going to get through the next variant, the 6205. So, Skies and I, as we showed this in the production numbers on the 6205, we noticed that Timepiece Bob, the book, Skies, and he's asking the name of the book. If you don't mind giving him the name of the book.
Man's Oyster Perpetual Submariner, The Watch That Unlocked the Deep by Nicholas Folks.
Yeah, Timepiece Bob by Nicholas Folks. So if you just search Nick Folks,
And,
yeah,
and
FOU.
wallpaper was the printers.
Yeah, so the first edition that Skyzen got, that I'm going to be buying too, because Skyzen sold me on it today, is the Silk edition. It's the first edition. Is on wallpaper. I think that's the sole place you can order it from right now. It's available on Amazon, but it's not the Silk edition, as Ali Reza had let us know. So if you want the first edition Silk edition, that's the one you get it from wallpaper. Um, but yeah, like super cool book, and really has helped us fuel a lot of the content today. 6205, Skies and I looked at it, and we noticed in the, there's variations of the 6205. So the first one here we just went through was the pencil hands. I'm going to show you guys now the Mercedes hands 6205 signature with Mercedes hands. What do you prefer, Skies? Do you like the pencil hands, or do you like the classic Mercedes hands here?
I actually like the pencil hands. It gives it a bit more individuality.
Yeah, it's cool to see, right? It's just it's funny how we like the variation. We like something that's just different, right? It's a real Submariner, but it's just different. That's why I love the Explorer dial, right? Like it's a Submariner, but it's got an Explorer dial on it. Like it's wild like that for me, and I find that super cool and entertaining.
A bit like the Space Dweller, which is an Explorer, but it's got Space Dweller written in the text.
Exactly. A Japanese market only watch, Space
Yeah.
Dweller, which like Skyzen said, is just basically a 1016, but it's got Space Dweller on it. Super cool piece. Now we're moving into the 6200, so kind of that trio of original Submariners. Here you see it with what I was just talking about, the Explorer dial 3, 6, and 9, Mercedes hands. Classic insert. Looks like a big crown on this. Cool piece. No Submariner text on the 6200. Not a fan of that, guys. And I would prefer the Submariner text or at least some like water resistance on the dial.
Did the 5512 369 come with Submariner text?
Well, I don't know if the 5514 did. The 5513, I
There's
believe, may have.
5512 they done a 369 on. I didn't think they'd done it on the
Yeah, there's a
13.
there's a 13369, and that's the thing, guys. And is you see the Explorer dials all over. You see them in the 6538s. You see them here in the 6200s. You see them in the 5513s. I've never seen one in a 5512, so maybe they're there. Danny is chiming in saying he prefers the Mercedes hands. He says they give him a more sporty look. Yeah, Danny, you're not wrong. I think hey, different strokes for different folks, and it's kind of whatever. This is the cool thing about vintage, guys. Is look, I know it's a minefield. I know it's difficult, but if you truly appreciate this stuff and you truly appreciate the variation, you can find the one that's like cool to you and still have a absolutely killer piece. And probably a rare piece if you're looking at vintage. Um, all right, so let's kind of move it along here. We've got the 6536. So this is what I've been recommending to Danny. I'm going to do a quick chrono search here for us, Danny. See, because I haven't been on chrono in a while looking for these. But I'm going to look up a Rolex 6536 on chrono and see kind of like what comes up. And there's a few things here on chrono, Danny. Let's go price. Let's go low to high, not high to low. Let's go low to high and kind of see what the ranges are here. So obviously at the low end, we're probably seeing again. These are these are obviously not original. You can have different inserts and different price points are going to be affected by what's not original to the watch. And as we were seeing, some of these inserts don't look original. And as you go into the more pricier ones, $30,000 and whatnot, you get into more original-ish pieces, $40,000, and even 40,000, right? So this one, this seller is posting it as, it's funny how they're calling it the James Bond. It's not a James Bond. The James Bond would be the 6538. And again, right, these small crown versions just are cheaper, Danny. Like 40,000, 30,000 is significantly cheaper. Now, if we go to the 6538, again, not always a lot for sale here, but if I go in the 6538s, and we just showed the highs in probably the 90,000 6536. I mean, you're at like 200,000 for the big
Yeah.
crown, right? Like it's just way more. It's just way more value for money here, Danny, in the small crown. 6536, and honestly, guys, like this is a beautiful piece. You see, I have this one on the screen. I would love to own this watch.
Definitely. It's one of my grails.
Yeah, Danny. So Danny's saying a lot of the 5513s, and actually they're actually distinguished by that. They call it the 5513 meters first. They'll usually put that. Vintage sellers will usually put that in the description because it is different, right? It's not feet first, which is where if you think about it, like it's the change in Rolex's history around where's the sphere of influence in watch buying, right? Like you have meters first, which is probably Europe. And then you have feet first, which it transitions to into the U.S. market, maybe U.S. and England, maybe, but mostly primarily the U.S. market. So yes, Danny's right. The early 5513s were meters first, and Danny says he wouldn't turn it down. What's going on, Pat? Chris? Good morning to you in New Zealand. Hope you're doing well. We're going through some vintage. People have been twisting my arm to do both a show for our UK and European fans, as well as do a vintage show. So try to get Archie to do any of those things, and that just won't ever happen. So I'm trying to fill in the void here for you guys as best as I can. So from the 6536, I'm sure we're going to get into different variations of it. We got the intermediate version. So you see here, obviously, a red triangle, which a lot of us love against small crown Mercedes hands. We've got the depth rating. We've got Submariner on it. Super cool piece. Love it. I think this is great. Again, would be comparable or good value if you're looking for a Dr. No looking watch, but don't want to spend Dr. No money. And then obviously the final version here, again, getting very closer to what the 6538 looks like. And then, 6538, so when they say 4-line, I'm going to show you guys what the 4-line means. So this is a 6538 that is a certified chronometer. So we got, you got your depth rating. Again, like Danny is describing, meters first, early models. Again, sphere of influence, probably that are the buyer maybe in Europe as opposed to the United States. Submariner text in like a gilt or a yellow. And then you got the chronometer certification. And what the difference here is also we've got big crown now here as opposed to in the 6536, we had the small crown. Danny says there's too many things to list. I love about the 6538. I know, man. I know, but like for a third of the price, you can get the 6536 and almost have the exact same thing. right? Like you can almost have the exact same thing. So if almost is good enough for you, Danny, then hey. But there's some people, guys, in that almost is not good enough. They have to have absolute perfection. And if you're looking for absolute perfection in this range, this is my favorite Rolex Submariner, the 6538 Big Crown. I think this is top
Yeah,
notch, guys. And now we got the 6538 two line. So when we're talking two line versus when we got two line versus four line, we're talking about obviously chronometer certification on the dial versus non chronometer certification. The two line does not have it. For me, Skies, and I would prefer the two line. I believe this is the one that you would see in Doctor No or in Goldfinger. I believe it's the two line. I don't think it's the four line. I don't
yeah,
think it's the chronometer one.
yeah. I think it's the two-liner.
So on the two liner, I think that it's really, yeah, I think that that's where, I think it's the sweet spot, Danny. Like 6538 two liner. Obviously, you guys know I'm going to look for a little bit more in the 6538, and I'm going to want the Explorer dial. But yeah, still, I wouldn't turn down a standard 6538 this way. Let's keep going here. We get into the 5510. So 1958, Skyzen showed us this. Again, very similar aesthetic to the previous model. Again, has the vibe of a Black Bay 54, Black Bay 58. As you guys see, definitely cool. Definitely very look. It's still modern, right? This is the thing about the Submariner. I was kind of saying to Dear Artifact earlier, because Dear Artifact is saying, well, I think they're going to come out with a new one for the 70th, and I agree with him. It's just how far are they going to go? And Tier Artifact was like, I would love a watch like this because it just would be so cool. And I would agree with him, even if they made it in 37 or 38 guys, and this would fly off the shelf in a 37 or 38 if it had the Rolex name on it.
I think they might, if they did do it, they'd do it in precious metal, white gold. I think to start with, like they done with the Pepsi GMT.
I think in this case for me, Skyzen, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Like Dear Artifact, if
I'd
you're
want
still
it in
listening,
stainless.
yeah, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Dear Artifact, if you're listening, please chime in the chat. Let me know if you feel the same way. Because, like, yeah, I would agree with these guys, and they're going to pull some fuckery and like make it a gold piece or make it so limited that only like you have to be like Marcelo and be in 50 Japanese magazines. Making making merguez sausage or something like that. I don't know. But I think this is a watch that I'd love for the masses to have. And honestly, we kind of do have it in Tudor. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the Tudors, it's just, they're not expensive, relative to Rolex. You can have a lot of fun with them and you get a quality watch, guys. You really do with a Tudor. Like, there's no shame in having a Tudor. I've owned many, and I'll always sing praises of the brand because I think they're doing
I
great
think if
things.
the Tudor would have put a Mercedes hand instead of Snowflake, our hand would make it that even bit better.
So Danny's asking us if the 6 o'clock has been reloomed. The 6 o'clock does have a different look to the other loom plots. Very, very possible, Danny. I'm not sure. Hard to tell in the picture. It could be lighting. It could be a lot of things. I'd have to probably see that in person. But yeah, definitely very possible. Danny's got a good eye for this kind of stuff. That's why I like Danny. When he's watching in the chat and he's able to follow along with us because he's got a good eye for this stuff. Then we get into the 5508. So the 5508, as I mentioned, AC3s own this watch. I had that funny story where AC3's 5508 was actually a two-tone 5508, which I always like to troll him. I always like to say that I always tell the crowd that he butchered it and made it a two-tone, but he actually bought it as a two-tone Skyzen, which is even worse.
Yeah, especially a Frankenstein.
Yeah, look, Archie was that kind of a guy, right? Like he was looking for the discount. And that's why, I kind of get a little offended when he doesn't want to answer the question because I know that's how he was. And I know that Danny knows that's how Archie was, the discount shopper. So it's like, come on, man. Like if I'm looking for a discount 6536, can you help me find one, right? Because you're the fucking guy who bought like a 5508, two-tone, which then never existed, which I just find is absolutely hilarious. We've got Dear Artifact still in the chat. Thanks so much, Dear Artifact, for listening in. Imagine a modern 37 mil no date sub, brown tropical dial, red triangle, ghost bezel modern reissue. I would move heaven and earth to add that to my collection. Absolutely, man. I think that would be so cool. I think that would be more what Tudor could do and actually have a real hit on their hands. And again, like people argue that they've done it, right? They've done it with the Black Bay. They've done it with the 58, done it with the 54. They could push it a little bit further, but everybody wants that Rolex name, and I think the Artifact, we just won't get our cake and eat it too, in that sense. Zeppy, I own 5 Tudors and love them. The North Flag is a cool one, man. That's the first Tudor with the in-house movement, chronometer grade, chronometer certified movement. I always thought that was a super cool watch when it came out. Not really loved, not really popular, but definitely a favorite of mine. Black Bay Pro, everybody knows it. Black Bay 58 Blue, I've owned, loved it. 1926 white dial and white glamour DBL date. Tudors are great watches. Skyzen, what do you think? You're a Tudor owner. I think you're a Tudor fan. Talk to us about Tudor, Skyzen.
Definitely. I think they're really good, bang for buck, because obviously Tudor have still got their own heritage, and I think the models that they bring out, they're good for everyone that's not got that price range to go for the full Rolex.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, the only
Absolutely.
thing I'd say is the Pro's a real hockey puck of a watch for a 39 mil.
Well, that's always been Tudor's Achilles heel, right? I believe their Achilles heel has always been their thickness and the complaints around their thickness. Now, you know what's interesting for me, Skyson? When I bought the Tudor Black Bay back when it was the Smiley ETA version. Um, I actually liked the thickness, believe it or not, and because it had a charm to it, it was different. It wasn't the Submariner, right? It actually differentiated it for me. I never really understood people's dislike for the thickness, just like similarly with the Super Case on the 40 mil Submariners. I just never got the hate for it. So for me, I don't really understand that, but it is definitely what a lot of people consider the Achilles heel. What about for you, guys? And like, do you feel that the thickness is a detriment for you, or do you just not give a shit like I do?
I don't give a shit because so I've got the left-hand drive and I've got the FXD, which is a lot slimmer.
Yeah,
And it doesn't bother me having a slab side case because
yeah,
when you're looking at front on, you don't even see the side of the case. As long as you've got the wrist to carry it off with, like I'm lucky I'm a 7 1/4. But if you're like a 6 1/2, you might notice it more.
Zeppy saying that Black Bay Pro is 14.6 millimeter. That's a big one, so it is definitely a pig. I would agree with that. Old Timey says, I love that the minute hand extends to the minute marker track. Interesting enough that, this comment, Old Timey, reminds me of the T-Rex version of the 39 mil Rolex Explorer, where they use the hands from the 36 into the 39, and therefore the minute hand would not reach them. It was the T-Rex hands, they call it. That's the one Rolex that definitely makes it,
And
that comes
that's
to mind.
missing a bit of that was missing a bit of loom in the minute hand, isn't it? Looks
Yes,
like it's dropped out.
yeah. Look, and again, these are I believe still radium looms, so definitely degrades pretty bad, and yeah, like radium and tritium, completely, obviously completely different beasts, but you do see similar type of degradation you could see in tritium pieces as well. T-Fit makes it a winner. Yep, T-Fit clasp is pretty cool. Your artifact says, I think the Tudor Black Bay 54 is an absolutely amazing watch. I agree with you, but it isn't at the level of the sub. I agree with you. When you feel the quality of the bezel action of a sub, your life changes. Yeah, this is where I would also agree with you, but I don't feel that I like the clickiness of the Black Bay bezels. Honestly, myself, guys, and I don't know if you disagree. Um, I know that
Yeah.
it doesn't have as many clicks as the subby
No, they've
does.
only got 60. They only have 60
Mhm.
click bezels, don't they?
Right.
Tudors.
So yeah, I mean, I get it. Right, it doesn't have as many clicks, but to me, I think it's very notchy. I think it's very satisfying on the clicks of the Tudor bezel. So I like, is it Rolex level? No.
But then
It's
all
not.
these vintage ones don't even have clicking bezels until it goes to the 14060 was the first clicking bezel.
That's a great point, right? Like, I in my 1680 red sub, it wasn't even unidirectional. It was bidirectional. Like,
Bi-directional, yeah.
yeah, I was freaked out by that when I bought it because that's the one thing I didn't research. And then the first thing you do with a sub is you play with the bezel, right? Like, and then I see that there's give on the other side, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here, right? Like, is it broken? And then I realized when I researched it that they were bidirectional up until I believe it was the 16 800s. Or even maybe later than that. But yeah, like, I think it was a 16800 that it went bidirectional, unidirectional. Sorry, but you're right. Like, didn't click. So yes, but look, the clickiness is a satisfying piece. I think of the Submariner. I think a lot of people like it. I mean, clickiness in a bezel is a thing, because there's tons of dive watches that are not the Submariner that have clicking bezels. So Rolex definitely needs to have the best actuation in that. But I think Tudor's no slouch. I think Tudor does Honestly, dear Artifact, I would venture to say for me, I like the Tudor bezel a heck of a lot more than I've ever liked the Seamaster scallop bezel. Like, especially in the older ones where like you can't grip that motherfucker at all. Like, it is just very difficult. Like, I don't know if you've had that experience with Seamaster bezels, but for me, it just absolute worst from a gripability perspective.
The one that lets me down is the FXD because it's bi-directional. It
Yeah.
doesn't click as nice as my left-hand drive clicks.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, look, this is what I love about watch collecting, right? It's the watches evoke a different emotion from all of us, right? Like, your artifact can find it the most pleasing part about the watch. Other people may not give a shit, right? Like, but this it does bring up fascinating topics, and it's very fascinating to me on how people, how they're reacting to the watch that they're wearing, right? And how that's bringing out an emotion out of them, or a feeling, or just a thought, right? That is different than Skyzen's experience, or my experience, or other people's experience in the chat. To artifact, I'm with you. The Seamaster bezel actually is terrible. My experience, Tudor has Omega beat in that regard. Yeah, and I mean, Omega is arguably should be a better brand, or considered a higher brand than Tudor, but hey, it is what it is. So you can also see the 4 crown sizes here. Rolex 5.5. We're getting into the 5.512 here again. Square crown guard. So definitely cool. If you guys want to see here on the crown guards, or square. And again, these are different variations that people look at when they're buying Submariners, right? Certain crown guards, certain dials, certain dial variations, underline, Swiss only, Swiss made, T Swiss, all this kind of stuff, right? Tons of variations, Sigma dials, in
They were
certain
the
cases.
first to have crown guards, weren't they? Because all the previous models were just showing a non-crown guard, aren't they?
Exactly, right, exactly. So you see the evolution of the Submariner here, guys, because the Submariner we know today isn't necessarily the Submariner that was created initially. And I always point that out, right? Because when people kind of talk about girl size watches, and they start putting the watches down because of the size, but then you see people absolutely simping watches that were never created to be in those size. I call people out, and I call people out about, like, everyone says, well, don't buy this vintage watch because it's a 37 mil, or it's a girl size. But I'm like, yeah, but every one of you motherfuckers would buy a Paul Newman Daytona, which is also 37 mils, and not bat an eye at it, right? So, like, where's the hypocrisy there, in my opinion? Skies.
I'm just going to grab a watch to show in a minute, Tan.
Absolutely, man, and more than happy
This
to
is the one special watch.
All right, let's see it. But yeah, guys, like for me, obviously love the evolution of the Submariner, a no crown guard model, a radium dial, didn't even have a depth rating at one point. Obviously had a lower depth rating than it currently does. Just cool to see just, how it's evolved over time, and, how it's gone. Isn't it crazy how amazing every version of the sub is through time? Every one of these is, yeah, I agree with your artifact. And this is why a lot of people just are afraid of vintage, because a lot of, watch YouTube just spooks modern, right? And, people kind of scoff at vintage because, a lot of folks just got into the hobby recently and have never gone on this journey. Like, I've been in this hobby, over a decade, collecting, for a long time, and I've dived into vintage. I've, bought modern. I have high horology. I have, basic Seikos. Like, I try to find stuff that really interests me, and flexing with the same old dozen pieces that are hype, like, it just gets boring, right? How's that fun for anybody? It's just, I don't see it, right? So that's why I feel that, like, going through vintage is just absolutely, absolutely a treat. All right,
Here
so
we go.
why don't you walk us through what we're looking at here on the screen?
This is a 1944 Dirty Dozen Bruin, which was my granddad's watch, which he wore. He got issued during the Second World War, which sees service in Calcutta, India.
Oh,
And
very
that's where he was based.
Yeah, I remember you telling me the story that, that your family member was in India. So that's a really cool story, man. I love it.
Radium loom. You can see where the loom's dropped out on the broad arrow hands.
Beautiful, very clean, man. I really like the way this looks, man. It's a very, very clean. Zeppy's chiming in, pretty cool, skies, and yeah, man. Like,
There's
just
about 8,000 ish of this one. This was one of the lower production models of the Dirty Dozen.
Oh wow, beautiful. I like the strap too. I think the strap's going with it. I think it's got a nice vibe. It's popping. It's popping really nice with the vintage vibe. You get a bit of like the copper that can mesh with the numerals and whatnot. I like that.
Fixed lugs bar as well, because obviously it was the design got put out by the British military, and that was the watch that they gave out to the 12 different companies to make for them.
Wow,
So you
amazing.
can get expensive ones like the Amiga, and the JLC done a version as well. Because only one British company, Vortex, actually made the watch the British side of things.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. Like
So I've got to get it serviced, and the small second hand's fallen off and dropped down here by the
I saw that.
5.
Yeah, I saw that. Look, it's like your artifact is saying, right, Skies, and this is amazing. An actual service issued watch, such an interesting piece. And obviously for me, Skyson's met me in person, told me about his connection to India. And yeah, for me, just it makes it even better, right? Because for me, watches are all about connections, connecting with your timepiece, connecting with friends, connecting with people online. This is what it's about, guys. It's it can be a super boring hobby if it's all about flexing. It's all about investments. It's all about who's got the better watch, right? Like, for me, when I see a guy like Skyzen roll in, to BQ watches, he's got his fit going. I remember Skyzen was wearing these custom, I think they were Air Force Ones. And he had his watch on his wrist and just, smiling. I was like, this is what it's about, man. It's about happiness. It's about what these things the joy we get from them, from the experiences we have. And, for me, that's an experience, guys, and I'll never forget. Like, I
And
remember
this
what
is
you were wearing because that's the emotion that evoked out from me, right?
and this is the watch that got me into collecting, because this was given to me when my granddad died in '88,
hmm
just before my 16th birthday. I was gifted this watch.
And look, like a lot of us weren't, some of us are fortunate to have been gifted really, really nice timepieces like HR department, who was just gifted a brand new bluesy by his mother. But, for the rest of us, I come from simple, it's a similar kind of stories, right? Obviously not military issued piece, but or service issued piece. For me, my grandfather, came to came to this country, worked, in a normal job, and could never really afford Rolex, right? He at the time, I think, had bought a Seamaster, and one of those like old vintage like dress watch Seamasters, whatever, right? Which what was gifted down, and again, just like you said, it's something, it's a love that it brings for watches. And um, whether it's family or not, it's the stories, I think, Skies, and that are the absolute best. And that's why I think that book, A Man and His Watch, is so popular, is because it really brings out the essence of the story, between the connection between whether you're a man or a woman, the individual, and their connection with their timepiece, and the experiences that they have with them, right? Um, Skyzen, we got another comment here from Dear Artifact, who says, "Dad and I are only going to Watch Time New York for the people in the community. Show is an afterthought." Yeah, I went to Watch Time last year, Dear Artifact, when Archie came. And yeah, look, like I spent most of my time, like obviously I perused the booths, and the booths are very busy. Gotham Hall is a very small place. The booths are busy, but this was at a time, obviously, when you had the Archieverse, and then you had the Tim Camp, and unfortunately we didn't have enough opportunity to actually have dinner and hang out together. At a going out, having a drink or whatever. We mostly met at the show, and I can remember Buckley coming up to me and saying, "Hey, you're Tan. Nice to meet you." Shook my hand. Super nice guy. It's always been Buckley's always been a stand up guy like that, and never any animosity, never anything, outside of just, seeing another watch collector or watch enthusiast that, was having a good time with their friends and stuff, right? And it was the same with us. We had I think 30, 40 people at JJ's dinner, in all different camps. We had people from Watch Nicholas's camp. Watch Nicholas was there. P Cars was there. Jake Brooks was there. To having a lot of the Archie guys that were there. AD Never Calling. We had Dirk Diggler. We had Tommy, I was there. Bear Clooney was there. Blondie was there. Lots of people, right? And obviously JJ,
Kelslowitz.
Kelslowitz was there, right? Like, too many to name, right? I'm gonna forget great people's names here. Jamie Opulence, tons of people, right? Like, it was more about that, and even London was the same thing. And I know that, like, for viewers of the Bro House, hey, look, I still found it wildly entertaining that night when we were trolling Tim, but I think every other time it was about the experiences, meeting people, meeting Skyzen for the first time. Seeing his love for watches, hanging out with Jock, hanging out with Archie, hanging out with Gary, OC, everybody, right? It was just a good time with good people, and yeah, that's what it's about, man. It's not about flexing. It's not about who's got the better collection. If somebody,
Must that bring us together for our love of watches.
yeah, yeah, and
That's the way I look at it.
yeah, I agree, and everybody. That is the commonality, right? That is the common bond between everybody. All these channels, all of YouTube, all of watch collecting is that love for watches. Now, people love watches for different reasons. Some people love watches for investments, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with people loving watches because it makes them it makes them feel more either more masculine or just it just gives them a pump of energy where they feel proud of it, and they show it off and stuff like that. Look, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, do people like that? Not really, but nothing wrong with that. It's an emotion it evokes out of you. So, but everybody loves these timepieces for a certain reason, and I think it's I think it's super cool that people can get like that with these pieces. Let me get back to a few more of these because I want to round it up. There is an after show here, guys. We've been doing a bit of a collab with a German channel. They usually get about 200 viewers on their show. I'm gonna be linking you guys over there in a second when I can get the link going. They're gonna be starting in 10 minutes. They're gonna be doing it in an English stream. They're gonna be doing some unboxings and stuff like that. So check it out. Because we're trying to bring obviously some new punchers to the Archieverse. We're collabing with obviously different channels. A lot of channels are trying to cross over. There's a huge German watch community that is, obviously interested in meeting the English speaking watch community and whatnot. So, we're doing a lot of the networking here, guys. If, contrary to popular belief, the Archie Luxury name goes a long way. And I'm going to be sending you guys over there in 10 minutes. But just to round off a few more of these pieces here, guys, and 5512 again, called the Eagle Beak Crown Guards. So again, you can see here the crown guards are not the square ones before, but now Eagle Beak Crown Guards. Again, tons of variation here. In Rolex 5512. Now the diamond pointed or the pointed crown guards. So you'll see here, different from the Eagle Beak is the pointed crown guards.
Yeah, that's more like the Pelagos crown guards.
Exactly,
that one,
right?
isn't it?
You start seeing the evolution. You start seeing when Rolex first came out with these these pieces of design that end up becoming part of, whether it's a Tudor collection that Skyzen's identifying, or whether that's on the a more neo vintage sub that Danny owns or whatnot, right? Just super cool for me to see the evolution. 521 Typeface says, "Tan, you've worked harder on this show than Archie has all year. Thank you, fuck me dead." Yeah, look, like it's hard to ask people to help Archie. It really is, right? Like, everybody's got a different experience with him, and I respect that. I respect if Archie's burned somebody or he's just not provided enough, content to what you feel he should be providing. That if anybody does not feel that they want to contribute, on the panel or whatever, I get it, right? Like, I just know that Archie's, he's got a tough situation. It's difficult for him to come on the show. He has not recovered from the robbery, guys. I'm letting you guys know this. It still hurts him to come on and talk about watches. He loves watches, but there's still part of him that there's trauma there, right? As well as, he's had personal trauma with his personal life, with his children and whatnot. The guy's just going through a tough time, and really stand up guys like Jay Anthony, Skyzen, Mental Jock, and many more that have hopped on the panel over the past couple of weeks. Bear Clooney, that's really meant a lot to me. And that's why people see me doing this stuff, right? Because I got fans, in the UK that love this show that are like, fuck, I just wish the show was on at a proper time for me to listen. And I know I'm not Archie Luxury either, guys, but I try to bring you guys good watch content that is different than what you get at the Watch Colony, that is different than what you get at Tim Wright, that is different than what you get anywhere. Because I know that a lot of these guys, even Bark and Jack, Adrian Barker used to be in the chat when I was talking watches. I've been doing this a lot longer than those guys have even. And I know what's good on watches and what's interesting. So yeah, I mean, that's the way I see it, Skyzen, is just helping. And I really do appreciate you helping us out today. Showing us the book, hopping on. You've been on for hours with Scratchy. You're on with me now. It does mean a lot, and I know it's going to mean a lot to Archie. And hopefully, I can get some people on Archie tonight that are different as well for you guys as well too. So
yeah, I've got my New York strip steak calling me soon.
You know what? Why don't you go have your steak, Skies, and I'll let you bow out nicely and go have your dinner because I'm going to be closing the show in about 5, 6, 7 minutes, probably at the top of the hour, and sending you guys over to the after show that we got going with our collab channel coming up. Again, it is a German channel, but they're going to be doing some Wash Talk in English. Please post your comments in the chat in English to know that they're there. And again, right, this is helping Archie too, because hopefully we're going to get their panelists on our show. Obviously working with Archie as well as getting him onto their show. Like a lot of different communities, guys. We talk about the Archieverse, like, you know, we're going into different universes here because there are a lot of people that know Archie, that love the Archie name. You know, and really, you know, that just, you know, are willing to help, right? I've reached out to a lot of people, and there's been a lot of great support there. Let me round the last few off here that I can get through. Again, we're still in the 5512 range. Getting into, and again, like, you know, Danny was pointing out feet first, meters first. You know, different, like this is actually, I think, a bit of a better reference, guys, in because like we actually get the production dates here. Like we know that this meters first 5512 has a production date of, or this whole model range has a production date of 69 to 80, whereas in the Nick Folks book it just says 1969, right? So
Yeah, definitely. They've got
Jim Millett, by the way, that was Archie Luxury. So you know, look, if Tim, you know, if Tim wants to reach out, he can, you know, if you, I know you're in contact with Tim also, you can send the email or have him if he wants to contact. Right? Look, Archie and Tim know each other. They've met each other in person. They are a long time, you know, obviously YouTubers that have a ton of mutual respect for each other, and a lot of like if you see Tim Mosso's chat, a lot of it is the Archieverse people that are there because we've always been big fans of Tim Mosso. So that was Archie Luxury. He can email Archie at archieluxury72@gmail.com. I'm sure people would love to see Archie on Tim's show, being civil and, you know, being Archie, but still being Archie. That would be cool. I would tune in for that. Archie on Tim's show. And look, I don't think Tim's ever going to come on here because Tim's probably got an exclusive contract with Govberg, but Tim also is a huge fan. Look, that's awesome, you know, and I know that, like, you know, work wise, you know, Tim's got a job and, you know, he works for certain people that we have a ton of respect for. I know Brian Govberg, done a deal. I've done, you know, I bought a watch from Brian Govberg personally. You know, he did the deal with me, and super cool guy. I'll play you guys a bit of a clip here that I have. Pretty handy here from back in the day. You'll probably remember this one, Jim Millett.
The Swiss. So Clive Watch Wrangler Brian, didn't you promise Tanzio on Sorry that Tim would autograph a poster to his biggest fan? I actually did promise that you would autograph a poster for Archie Luxury and we would send it to him.
If you have a poster of me, that's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, so no.
Is that a thing?
So, well, it's going to be a thing because we're going to have a poster made of you, and you're going to need to autograph it to Archie Luxury because I promised that we would send one out.
I can do, but do we ship internationally?
Well, we will. We will.
That's the first international gift we've ever given away. Congrats, Archie.
So Jim Millett's talking about a few days ago, I guess, on Tim's show. Archie was around, and Tim also actually did bring it up. So it was Archie, and this is Tim's proof, Jim. If you want to send it to him, that Archie did put the clip in his brands because he is that excited.
Those have been the best finished watches I've encountered. Okay, Archie Luxury live stream. If that's really Archie Luxury, I salute you, my man. I know you're on the other side of the world and you're getting up early to watch that. What else is going on here? We got.
That's cool, Ace, guys, and I don't know if you're a fan of Tim also, but you know they are mutual. There's mutual respect between the two, and you know it's super cool to see because you know Tim also is such a legend. Like everybody's taking like, you know, watch the video from Tim or taking some, you know, line from Tim and just. You know, and same from Archie, right? Those two guys are like, I would say, the two most influential. To me, my point blank, the two most influential watch YouTubers out there ever: Archie Luxury, Tim Mosso. And look, I know Archie's going to hate this. A close third is TGV. TGV influenced a ton of people. Like those three are the top three, in my opinion. I don't know, Skyzen, do you disagree? What do you think?
Definitely. So I'll still watch TGV. Comes up with some good, interesting content. Not all of it's my cup of tea, but just the way it is.
Yeah, look, it's TGV has his history with Archie. I was booted from TGV's. I was booted from his Facebook group simply because I live streamed on Archie. Like I was like on his panel. Like I was totally posting completely like normal stuff on the Facebook group. Like, hey, check out my watch today. Like normal stuff. Somebody caught that I was tan from the Archie show. and then instant boo from the Facebook group. Jim Millett says about 20 of us from Tim's Facebook group chat to Tim at least once per week. Tim really does respect Archie. That is super nice to hear, Jim. Hopefully if Tim would ever be open to it and Archie would, and I can get Archie to behave, which I can guarantee I can get him to behave, I would love to have Archie just do a one-on-one with Tim, just the true one-on-one between two friends that have mutual respect for each other, that have worked so long in the industry, just to have a fireside chat, right? Just about Paddock Philippe's, like, how good would that be, right? And Archie could put it up, like, hopefully Godberg allows Archie to put it up on his channel or excerpts on his channel, and Tim would be able to then post on it. I think that would be great for both channels, Jim. So if you're open to it, I obviously work very closely with Archie, and I can guarantee you we can get that collab done on our side if Tim is open to it. So let us know if that's something you guys can sort out, because I know, Jim, you're also a big big Archie fan as well, and I do appreciate your viewership. I try to do these shows for everybody, centered on Wash Talk. I know there's a lot of craziness in the Archieverse, and I've really in the past few weeks with really the return of Bear Clooney, focused the show to be centered around Watch Talk. Look, the comedy's still going to be there. Look, the Narc is still welcome to hop on. He does hop on when our panelists are on. Gives us some comedic relief. Same with HR. Same with everybody else. Surdy, Danny, everybody's welcome to hop on. Just super, for me, super important that the Watch Talk is core to the channel. That, even, a lot of people know me as the Paddock Philippe guy. Not many people know me as somebody who knows a ton about vintage Rolex as well as Rolex. I have a huge love for Rolex. Was a big time, collector, in vintage and modern. And yeah, I like sharing stuff that, it's just not talked about on other streams, and realistically just don't, in my opinion, should, talk about certain things that are just difficult topics, because people either don't have the experience or just, it's just not of interest to them, right? They're just not super interested.
They're just going to talk modern all the time, which bores me, just modern. There's only so much you can listen to about modern watches, modern Rolexes.
Yeah, and I know there's a ton of people. Okay, here we go. Most influential watch YouTubers, Random Rob and Jody at one more watch. There you go. So we give Dr. Bob. Look, and one cool thing about Dr. Bob is, like, me and Dr. Bob like to watch, like, really obscure and small YouTube channels, and I always see Dr. Bob there, and he started to see me there a little bit. And Dr. Bob, he's a guy who loves these shows, and I give him a lot of respect here in the Archieverse, because he's a guy who just loves this kind of stuff, just like I do, right? Funny to watch Marcelo, who's panicking while most of his chat got okay, I don't even know what that means. Jim says, I'll pass it on to Tim. I think Will sees that 1916 may be difficult, but one day it'll happen. Yeah, look, like, it's totally cool, and yeah, look, it's all good. Whether they do it now or later, I think it will happen, Jim. I think eventually it'll happen. Try to get, yeah, look, Archie will, I can get him to come by. He can be there at any time that Tim wants him there. I would say that, Jim, what if we did this? What if Tim was open to just a recorded interview with Archie? Either, Archie probably goes to the studio. He go to the studios in Hong Kong. So I think Tim's there actually next month, or wherever. And then they could just do a recorded video so that obviously it can be edited, and 1916 would be okay with it. Let us know if that's cool. If not, guys, I'm going to end the show now. We do have an after show going on at the Watch Ragazzi channel, a channel that's looking to collab with Archie Luxury. Go over there, show some love. They're going to be doing it in English. I'm going to be over there. They're going to talk some watches. Thank you so much, guys, and for hopping on. And I'll see you guys.
Thank you for having me on, Tan, and thank you, chat.
All right, guys, that's the end of it. We'll see you guys over at Watch Ragazzi. Take care. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.